The visual effects are known among programming circles as the white hand sprite, the ghost animation, and the buried alive model. Each has been found to cause headaches, nausea, and in severe cases, hemorrhaging of the brain and lungs. While around 70% of Lavender Town syndrome, or LTS, is due to the Lavender Town tone, the remaining percentage is split among the visual phenomena. This is partly due to the visual stimuli occurring after the player is introduced to the Lavender Town tone. It's been theorized that these unaffected by the oral stimulation, such as the deaf or hard of hearing, make up the remaining 30%. While viewing these models can cause the effects, there are certain methods that allow a viewer to safely examine them in detail. The white hand sprite, known in the code as whitehand.gif. This was scripted to appear as a Pokemon on the 3rd floor of the Lavender Town Tower. It is divided into 4 separate animations: an introduction, or the cry a Pokemon unleashes before a battle, an idle, and 2 attacks. These attacks are unknown as they're simply listed as fist and brutal. While viewing the animation has been proven to be hazardous, viewing the individual frames of the model has been proven to have no adverse effects. The white hand is depicted as a shriveled, slightly decayed hand, with surprising attention to detail. Flesh is peeling back from the bone, and several tendons dangle realistically out of the wrist. The first attack is the hand balling into a fist and swinging forward. However, the brutal animation is missing several frames. The hand seems to open up, then cuts out. After a few seconds, it reappears closed again. No record has been found of these missing frames. The ghost animation, known in the code as haunting.swf, was intended to be placed in several areas throughout the tower, including the center of a path on the 2nd floor. However, players cannot interact with it, leaving many to believe that it was intended as a background feature. The ghost animation, like the white hand sprite, must be viewed as individual frames. It's comprised of 59 frames total. However, after extraction, around half of these frames have been revealed to be the standard ghost model used in all versions of the Pocket Monsters games that allow travel to Lavender Town. Around a quarter of the remaining frames are comprised of static that produces a fading effect. However, interspersed with these bursts of static are several frames of screaming faces and images of a skeletal man in a cloak, hypothesized to be the Grim Reaper, and several killed corpses. The meaning behind these are unknown. While under oath before the Video Game Commission Board, lead programmer Hisashi Sogabe testified as to having no knowledge as to where these images surfaced. Out of all the phenomena associated with LTS, the animation is the most speculated on. In his thesis, Video Games and the Manipulation of the Human Mind, Dr. Jackson Turner argued that the images were intentionally placed in. Due to their brief time appearing on the screen and the graphic nature of these images, Turner theorized that these were meant to subliminally influence players into becoming more frightened by the disturbing surroundings. The Buried Alive model, often referred to as its code name, the Berryman script. The Buried Alive model was to be found on the final story of the Pokemon Tower, on the spot of what has been replaced with the Marowak ghost. According to the script assigned to it, the Buried Alive model was intended to be the boss of the tower. Upon reaching the top floor, the following conversation would have taken place.
You're here. I'm trapped. And I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?
After this, the battle would have initiated. Once in battle view, the buried alive model appears to be a decaying human corpse, attempting to crawl out of the ground. It has been programmed to have 2 white hands, a Gengar, and a Muk. Strangely enough, a protocol for buried alive's actions after defeat weren't written. In the case of the player defeating him, the game would freeze. However, an unknown programmer is said to have wrote a specific ending that was supposed to play once the buried alive model had won. In this ending, buried alive was to have stated, "Finally, fresh meat," followed by several lines of gibberish. He was to have then dragged the player into the ground surrounding him. The scene would finish with a typical game over screen. However, in the background, an image of buried alive devouring the player was to have been seen. Especially strange are the protocols for after this scene. The cartridge was to download this image to the small internal memory contained in the Game Boy, overriding the title screen that normally accompanied a Game Boy turning on. Afterward, whenever the Game Boy was started, the player would view this same image of buried alive, devouring the player character from the Pokemon games, as a sound file known as staticmesh.wave was played. The intended purpose for this effect, unlike many of the other factors leading towards LTS, is unknown.